The screaming had stopped 3 hours ago. Commander HFY of the Hegemony's Third Fleet pressed his chitinous claws against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the smoldering ruins of the human colony below. New Sanctuary had been a peaceful world, agricultural, isolated, defenseless, perfect for what the Hegemony called a harvesting operation. Status report. He clicked in the native tongue of his species, the HFY, 17,000 colonists. Process for labor conscription. His aide, Subcommander Yilix, reported with mechanical precision. 12,000 terminated during pacification. Infrastructure intact and ready for occupation. HFY nodded, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display. The HFY had perfected this formula across a dozen worlds. Humans were valuable. Their adaptability made them excellent workers. Their emotional bonds made them compliant when properly leveraged, but they had to be broken first. The specimens, he asked, secured in holding base 7, 43 breeding pairs, optimal genetic diversity, and Yilix hesitated, mandibles clicking nervously. The youth acquisition, HFY's interest sharpened. Human children, raised from infancy by HFY science, became the most effective assets. They retained human ingenuity while developing loyalty to the Hegemony. His scientists had been perfecting the process for decades. Show me. The security feed revealed a sterile white chamber, where a human child, perhaps 5 years old, sat alone. The girl had survived the colony's destruction through sheer chance, hidden in a root cellar. While her family died above, now she would serve a greater purpose. What designation shall we assign? Yilix inquired. Asset designation, Kira 9. HFY decided. The human name seemed appropriate for what she had been. What she would become was entirely different. Dr. Zelnoth, the Hegemony's leading Xenop psychologist, materialized on the communication array. Her scarred carapace bore the marks of decades spent breaking alien minds. Commander, I've reviewed the psychological profiles. This specimen shows exceptional promise, high intelligence markers, strong survival instinct, minimal trauma scarring. With proper conditioning, she could become one of our most valuable human agents. Timeline: 15 years for full integration. The human brain is remarkably plastic at this age. We'll begin with memory suppression protocols, then progressive indoctrination. By maturity, she'll believe herself born HFY, think like us, serve us willingly. HFY watched the child through the feed. She sat motionless, staring at nothing, her small frame lost in the vast chamber. She had no idea that her family was dead, her world conquered, her future stolen. The HFY had learned that gradual revelation was most effective. Let subjects discover their origins slowly. After loyalty had been established, begin the process, he ordered. What HFY didn't see was the small device, clutched in the child's hand, a military-grade emergency beacon her father had pressed into her palm before the final attack. The beacon that had been transmitting continuously for 18 hours. The beacon that had already been detected by a deep space monitoring station 3 parsecs away. In the depths of human space, Admiral Marcus Rain stood before a holographic star map, his weathered face carved from stone. Around him, the war room of the UHDF battleship Retribution hummed with quiet efficiency. Confirmation on the signal, Admiral, reported Captain Nora Voss, her voice tight with controlled fury. It's authentic military grade, registered to Colonel Daniel Ashford. New Sanctuary Colonial Defense. Rain's jaw clenched. He'd known Dan Ashford for 20 years, served with him during the border wars. Dan had retired to New Sanctuary to raise his daughter in peace. The same daughter whose emergency beacon was now crying out from a HFY fleet. Fleet status: 7th. Battle group is combat ready, 18 ships, full deployment capability. Time to intercept: 60 hours at maximum burn. Rain studied the tactical display. The HFY were 3 days ahead, but they'd be moving slowly with their captured prizes. Still reachable, still vulnerable. Signal the fleet, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Full military burn. Battle stations. We're going hunting. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They'd seen that look before, the cold, calculating expression that had earned Rain his reputation during the war. The HFY had made a critical error. They'd taken a human child. Now they would learn why humanity had earned its fearsome reputation across the galaxy. The first human ships appeared on HFY's sensors 62 hours after departing New Sanctuary. What should have been impossible, a response this swift across such distances, was happening before his compound eyes. Long-range contacts, bearing 27 Mark IV, his tactical officer reported. Voice pitched high with stress. Configuration suggests heavy cruiser class, human design. Vex'Dia's claws scraped against his command throne. The nearest human military installation was supposed to be 8 parsecs away, too distant for rapid response, yet here they were, closing fast on an intercept course. How many? Sensor resolution unclear at this range. Commander, estimate, 12 to 15 vessels. The numbers sent ice through Vex'Dia's circulatory system. His fleet consisted of 27 ships, but most were transports laden with human cargo. Only 8 were true warships, and the humans had proven disturbingly effective in ship-to-ship combat during previous conflicts. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Combat formation Theta 7. All civilian transports to the center, military vessels. Form a defensive sphere. In her sterile cell, the human child asset designation Kira 9 pressed her face against the small porthole. She couldn't understand the alien chatter echoing through the ship's corridors, but she recognized panic in any language. The creatures that had taken her were afraid. Dr. Zelnoth entered the chamber, her movements sharp with agitation. Come, specimen, we must relocate you to a more secure section. The child didn't move. Something in the doctor's posture, the urgency of her clicking mandibles, sparked a memory. Her father had looked the same way during the colony's evacuation drills. Controlled fear barely contained desperation. My daddy's coming, the girl said quietly. Lane's single quotes OTH paused. Her alien features unreadable. Your father is dead, child. We are your guardians now. No, the word carried absolute certainty. My daddy's coming, and he's angry. Admiral Rain stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the HFY fleet resolve on the main display. 27 contacts, arranged in a defensive formation that told him everything he needed to know about their composition and intentions. Analysis, Captain Voss. Standard harvesting fleet configuration, she reported. 8 military vessels, likely destroyer to light cruiser class. The rest are transports. That's where they'll have the civilians, which means we can't use our heavy ordnance without risking the captives. Correct, sir. This'll have to be surgical. Rain nodded grimly. The HFY were counting on human reluctance to endanger their own people. It was a reasonable assumption and completely wrong. Signal the fleet, he commanded. Operation parameters are now in effect. Primary objective, disable transport vessels and extract human survivors. Secondary objective, total annihilation of HFY military assets. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. They'd rehearsed scenarios like this countless times, but never with this level of personal investment. The Admiral's connection to New Sanctuary had spread through the fleet. Everyone knew this wasn't just another rescue mission. Range to target, 40,000 kilometers and closing. Opened a channel to the HFY flagship. The main screen shimmered, revealing Commander Vex'Dia's insectoid features. His translator rendered his words in flat, mechanical tones. Human vessel, you are interfering with hegemony operations in sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Rain stepped forward, his presence filling the screen. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 40 years in uniform and the cold fury of a man who'd seen too much. Commander, I am Admiral Marcus Rain of the United Human Defense Force. You are holding human civilians taken from New Sanctuary Colony. Release them immediately, and I might let some of your people live. Vex'Dia's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You threatened us with 15 ships against 27. Your mathematics are flawed, Admiral. My mathematics are fine, Rain replied. I'm not threatening you with 15 ships. I'm threatening you with humans. The connection terminated. All ships, this is Retribution. Rain broadcasts on fleet frequency. Remember what we're fighting for. Every transport that escapes means human lives lost forever. No mercy, no quarter. Show them why the galaxy fears us. The human fleet accelerated, abandoning all pretense of caution. 16 kilometers per second became 20, then 25. Physics became a weapon as the human ships pushed their inertial compensators beyond safe limits. Vex'Dia watched the impossible approach with growing dread. Human vessels were smaller than HFY designs, but they moved like predators, fast, aggressive, accepting risks that no rational species would contemplate. Open fire when they reach optimal range, he ordered. Sir, they're still accelerating. Current velocity suggests they'll reach maximum weapons range in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. HFY had commanded fleets for 3 decades, fought against a dozen different species. He'd never seen anything approach like this, not even the savage HFY in their berserker phases. The humans weren't just coming to fight. They were coming to destroy everything that stood between them and their people. And HFY was beginning to understand that his fleet might not be enough to stop them. The first salvo lit up space like a miniature star. HFY's fleet opened fire at maximum range, their particle beams and plasma torpedoes reaching out across 30,000 kilometers of vacuum. The human ships didn't even attempt evasive maneuvers. They absorbed the punishment on their forward shields and kept coming. Impossible, breathed his tactical officer. Their shield technology, how are they maintaining coherence under that bombardment? The answer revealed itself as the human fleet closed to effective range, instead of the measured, tactical engagement HFY expected. The humans did something that defied all military doctrine. They charged. Admiral Rain's voice crackled across the fleet frequency, all ships, maximum burn, ramming speed. Let's show them what desperate humans can do. The lead human vessel, a heavy cruiser designated Vengeance, took a direct hit from a HFY plasma torpedo. Its starboard shield ray collapsed in a cascade of failing energy matrices. Instead of falling back to regroup, the ship accelerated harder. Vengeance to fleet command, came Captain Torres' voice, strained but steady. We've lost starboard shields and taken hull damage to sections 7 through 12. Continuing attack run. HFY watched in horror as the damaged human ship bore down on his flagship. At the last possible moment, Vengeance rolled and unleashed a full spread of kinetic penetrators at point-blank range. The projectiles, moving at significant fractions of light speed, punched through the HFY vessel's armor like tissue paper. His flagship shuddered as secondary explosions rippled through its hull. Atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches, carrying HFY crew into the void. Damage report, HFY screeched. Main drive offline. Weapons array at 60%. Hull integrity compromised on decks for through 7. The human fleet swept through his formation like a plague. Ships that should have been retreating after taking such damage instead pressed their attacks. With suicidal determination, the destroyer Relentless lost its entire bow section to a particle beam, but continued firing with its remaining weapons until it finally broke apart. In the depths of the transport ship Harvester's Pride, the human prisoners felt the ship shudder under weapons fire. Dr. Zelnoth rushed through the corridors, her usual composure cracking as explosions echoed through the hull. She burst into the child cell, finding Kira 9 sitting calmly in the center of the room. We must move you to the central vault, Zelnoth chittered. Your genetic material is too valuable to risk in battle. The child looked up with eyes far too old for her face. They're here, aren't they? The humans. Terrorist raiders, nothing more. The hegemony will. My daddy told me about humans, Kira 9 interrupted. He said we don't start fights, but we sure as hell finish them. Through the porthole, the little girl could see human ships darting between the larger HFY vessels like wolves among sheep. She pressed her hand against the glass, the emergency beacon still clutched in her palm. Captain Voss coordinated the fleet's assault from Retribution's bridge, her tactical display showing the brutal mathematics of the engagement. Human losses were mounting 3 ships destroyed, 4 more critically damaged, but they were achieving their objectives. Transport vessel Bleeding Star is breaking formation, reported her tactical officer. She's making a run for the jump point. Interceptor and Rampart pursue and disable. Use minimum force. She's carrying civilians. The 2 destroyers peeled off in pursuit, their engines burning holes in space as they chased the fleeing transport. Voss watched their icons close the distance, knowing that every second's delay meant human captives moving further from rescue. Admiral Rain stood at the center of the chaos, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. Reports flooded in from across the fleet: damage assessments, ammunition counts, casualty reports. The numbers painted a stark picture. His force was being bled white, but they were winning, sir. Called his communications officer. Incoming. Transmission from the HFY flagship. Put it through. HFY's image appeared, his compound eyes reflecting the fires burning in his ship's background. Admiral Rain, you must cease this attack. Your losses are becoming unsustainable. My losses? Rain's laugh was sharp as a blade. Commander, you're about to learn what unsustainable really means. Be reasonable. We can negotiate. You took a human child. Rain interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. There are no negotiations. He gestured to his communications officer, who terminated the connection. Signal all ships. Rain. Commanded. Phase 2. Target the transport's engines only. I want those ships dead in space, not dead in space with dead civilians inside. The human fleet adapted its tactics with frightening efficiency. Instead of going for killing blows, they began precision strikes designed to cripple rather than destroy. It was a more dangerous approach requiring closer engagement, more accuracy, more risk, but these were humans fighting for their own. HFY realized, with growing horror, that he was witnessing something unprecedented in HFY military history, a species willing to sacrifice everything for its young. The humans weren't just fighting a tactical engagement, they were conducting a rescue operation. With the fury of a holy war, his fleet was doomed. The only question now was how many humans he could take with him before the end. All ships, he broadcast on the HFY frequency, initiate Directive Omega. If we cannot keep our prizes, we ensure no one can have them. Across the HFY fleet, self-destruct sequences began their countdown. In 5 minutes, every transport carrying human civilians would detonate, taking their captives with them into oblivion. The humans had from minutes and 30 seconds to save their people. The real battle was just beginning. All transports are showing energy buildup consistent with self-destruct sequences. Captain Voss reported, her voice tight with controlled panic. Time to detonation for minutes and 23 seconds. Admiral Rain's jaw clenched as he processed the tactical nightmare before him. 19 HFY transports scattered across 30,000 cubic kilometers of space, each carrying human civilians, each preparing to explode rather than surrender their cargo. How many people? He asked quietly. Estimated 17,000 survivors aboard the transports. 17,000. The number hit Rain like a physical blow, and for minutes, every man, woman, and child from New Sanctuary would die unless his fleet could perform the impossible. Open fleet frequency, he commanded. When the channel activated, his voice carried across 16 ships with absolute authority. All captains. This is Admiral Rain. The enemy has initiated self-destruct protocols on all civilian transports. We have less than 4 minutes to board those ships and disable their self-destruct systems manually. A moment of stunned silence followed. What he was proposing violated every principle of space combat boarding actions. Against armed vessels in the middle of a battle, with barely enough time to reach the targets, let alone complete the mission. Captain Torres of the badly damaged Vengeance was the first to respond. Admiral, Vengeance requesting permission to attempt boarding of Transport 7. We've got 40 Marines aboard and nothing left to lose. Granted. All ships with boarding capability, select targets and begin. Approach. This is gonna be brutal. People, some of us won't be coming home. Across the human fleet, Marines donned combat armor and checked their weapons with grim efficiency. They understood the mathematics as well as their commanders. Too many targets, too little time, too much space between them. Success would require sacrifices that would haunt the survivors forever. The destroyer Rampart accelerated toward the transport Soul Harvester, her captain pushing the engines beyond their rated capacity. In the ship's boarding bay, Sergeant Major Elena Vasquez addressed her 23 Marines. Listen up, she barked over the sound of groaning bulkheads. We've got 2 minutes to reach that transport. Board her, find the self-destruct mechanism, and shut it down. Intel suggests the command center will be heavily defended. Expect heavy resistance. Private Morrison, barely 18 and on his first deployment, raised his hand. Sarge, what if we can't find it in time? Vasquez's scarred face was granite hard. That we die alongside 3,000 human civilians, Morrison. But we die fighting. The transport ship Harvester's pride shuddered as human weapons fire disabled her engines. Dr. Zelnoth dragged asset designation Kira 9 through corridors filled with panicking HFY crew members. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows. Where are we going? The child asked, surprisingly calm amid the chaos. The central vault, Zelnoth replied, her translator struggling with her stressed vocalizations. It's the most protected section of the ship. You'll be safe there until an explosion rocked the vessel. As the human cruiser Retribution came alongside, magnetic grapples locked onto the transport's hull with thunderous impacts that reverberated through the entire ship. They're boarding, Kira 9 observed with the matter-of-fact tone children use for the obvious. Zelnoth pulled her forward with increasing desperation. The self-destruct would activate in 90 seconds, even if the humans somehow disabled it. The doctor's orders were clear. Asset Kira 9 was not to fall into enemy hands alive. The cutting charges detonated in sequence, blowing perfectly circular holes through 3 layers of hull armor. The first, human Marines through the breach moved like death incarnate black combat armor, enhanced reflexes, weapons that spoke in controlled bursts of hypervelocity rounds. HFY security forces met them in the transport's main corridor. The aliens had the advantage of numbers and prepared positions. The humans had desperation and superior firepower. The battle was brief and vicious. Corporal Jana hazed up behind a support beam as particle beam fire seared the air where she'd been standing. Her enhanced combat sensors showed enemy positions throughout the corridor. 12 HFY soldiers, well-armed and determined. Tango, tango, tango. She vocalized into her comm system, painting targets for her squad. Multiple hostiles, Corridor 7 Alpha, requesting immediate support. The response came in the form of a micro-missile that screamed down the corridor and detonated among the HFY positions. The explosion cleared half the defenders. Hayes and her squad finished the rest with precision fire. Control room located. Reported Sergeant Kim over the squad frequency. Heavy resistance, but we're pushing through. Need 30 more seconds. 30 seconds they didn't have. Hayes checked her chronometer. 43 seconds until detonation. The self-destruct countdown echoed through the ship's communication system. A mechanical HFY clicking dot in the central vault. Dr. Zelnoth sealed the final blast door behind them. The chamber was a fortress within a fortress, designed to protect the most valuable assets during ship-to-ship combat. It would also contain the explosion when she activated the backup self-destruct device. Concealed in her medical kit, Kira-9 sat in the center of the room, her small hands clasped in her lap. You're going to kill me, aren't you? The doctor's compound eyes focused on the child. It is regrettable, but you cannot be allowed to return to human space. The knowledge you would gain here, the psychological conditioning techniques too. Dangerous. My daddy's going to be very upset. The girl said calmly, your father is dead. Then he'll be upset and angry. That's even worse. Through the sealed doors came the sound of cutting tools. Human Marines burning through the blast barriers with industrial-grade plasma cutters. They had perhaps 20 seconds before breaching the final door. Dodzy Lane single quotes OTH activated the device. A small, unassuming cylinder that would vaporize everything within a 50-meter radius. 10 seconds to detonation. The blast door exploded inward in a shower of molten metal. 3 human Marines rushed through the breach, weapons raised. Combat. Sensors sweeping for threats. 5 seconds. The lead Marine, a woman whose armor bore sergeant straps, spotted the device in Zelnoth's claws. Her enhanced reflexes kicked in, time seeming to slow as her mind processed the tactical situation. 3 seconds. Sergeant Major Vasquez raised her rifle and fired. The hypervelocity round took Dr. Zelnoth's arm off at the shoulder, sending the device spinning across the chamber. 1 second. Vasquez dove, catching the cylinder inches from the floor. Her armored fingers found the deactivation sequence, a pattern she'd memorized from intelligence briefings about HFY demolition devices. 0 seconds. The device powered down with a soft electronic whine. In the sudden silence, Kira-9 looked up at the towering figure in black combat armor. Are you here to take me home? Vasquez removed her helmet, revealing a face marked by years of warfare, but softened by infinite relief. Yes, sweetheart, we're taking you home, across the fleet. Similar dramas played out with varying degrees of success. Some Marines reached their targets in time, others died in the attempt. Of the 19 transports carrying human civilians, the fleet saved 14. 5 ships detonated, taking nearly 3,000 souls into the void. The victory was bought with human blood and would be remembered with human tears, but it was still a victory. The rescue was only half complete. 14 transports hung dead in space, their human cargo safe, but trapped aboard disabled alien vessels. Between them and freedom lay the remaining HFY military fleet. 8 warships commanded by an increasingly desperate Vextai. Admiral Rain studied the tactical display from Retribution's bridge, calculating odds that grew worse with each passing moment. His fleet had been bled white during the boarding actions. 3 ships destroyed, 7 more critically damaged, ammunition running low across all vessels. The HFY, meanwhile, had repositioned their remaining military assets between the transports and the jump point. They couldn't reclaim their prizes, but they could ensure the humans paid the maximum price for their rescue operation. Status report. Rain commanded. Captain Voss's face was grim. We've got 11 ships still. Combat capable, but barely. Vengeance is held together by prayer and emergency force fields. Rampart lost her main drive during the boarding action. Interceptor is down to emergency power only. Ammunition, critical on all vessels. Kinetic penetrators at 30%. Missiles at 15%. If this goes on much longer, we'll be throwing rocks. Rain nodded grimly. The mathematics were stark. His battered fleet against 8 fresh Kethmori warships. Under normal circumstances, it would be a massacre. But these weren't normal circumstances. They were fighting for human lives. And that changed everything. Signal the fleet, he ordered. All ships prepare for final assault. We're going to punch through their formation and cover the transport's withdrawal. Commander Vextai observed the approaching human fleet from his damaged flagship's bridge. His tactical officers had run the calculations repeatedly. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and critically low on ammunition. This should be the moment of Kethmori victory. So why did he feel like prey? All ships, maintain formation, he ordered. Let them come to us. When they're committed to their attack run, we'll envelop them from all sides. It was a sound strategy, one that had served the hegemony well in dozens of engagements. But Vextai was beginning to understand that humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't retreat when logic dictated withdrawal. They didn't surrender when facing impossible odds. They just kept coming. The human fleet accelerated toward the Kethmori line, their formation tight and aggressive. At the lead flew Retribution, her massive bulk scarred by hours of combat, but her weapons still operational. Behind her came the surviving ships of the 7th Battle Group, each one a monument to human determination and sacrifice. Range to target, 15,000 kilometers, reported Voss. Kethmori vessels are maintaining defensive positions. They're waiting for us to commit, Rain observed. Standard envelopment tactics. They'll let us approach, then close the trap from all sides. Orders, sir. Rain's smile was cold as vacuum. We're going to give them exactly what they expect. Then we're going to show them why that's a mistake. The first exchange of fire lit up the void between the fleets. Kethmori particle beams reached out across the darkness, seeking human targets with lethal precision. The destroyer Stalwart took a direct hit to her starboard side, atmosphere venting in brilliant streamers as her hull ruptured. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the fleet frequency. Stalwart to command. We've lost starboard weapons and taken heavy casualties. Continuing attack run. The human response was immediate and devastating. Instead of the measured salvos typical of fleet engagements, every human ship opened fire simultaneously. Kinetic penetrators, plasma torpedoes, and missile volleys converged on the Kethmori line like a hammer blow from an angry god. The alien cruiser Blade of Dominion staggered under the concentrated firepower, her armor ablating away in molten streams. Secondary explosions rippled through her hull as ammunition stores detonated in chain reactions. Impossible, breathed Vextai's tactical officer. They're using their entire remaining ammunition load in a single salvo. It's tactical suicide. But Vextai was beginning to understand. The humans weren't trying to preserve their fleet for future engagements. They were spending everything, ships, lives, ammunition in a single, desperate gamble to save their people. The Kethmori formation wavered under the assault. 2 ships were destroyed outright, their hulls cracking like eggs under the massive kinetic impacts. A 3rd vessel, the heavy cruiser Hegemony's Wrath, lost main power and began drifting helplessly. The human fleet swept through the gap like an avenging angel, their remaining weapons seeking fresh targets. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Stalwart finally succumbed to her damage, breaking apart in a silent explosion that painted the void with debris and bodies. Captain Sarah Kim of the light cruiser Defiant watched her friend die, with tears freezing on her cheeks. Rodriguez had been her academy roommate, her first posting companion, godfather to her children. Now he was cosmic dust and fading energy signatures. Defiant to all ships, she transmitted, her voice steady despite her grief. Captain Rodriguez is down. We've lost Stalwart, but the bastards paid for her. Form up on Retribution and prepare for second pass. The surviving Kethmori ship's 5 vessels now, battered but still dangerous, regroup behind their flagship. Vextai's compound eyes reflected the fires burning throughout his bridge. As he assessed the tactical situation, his force had been reduced by over half. The humans had lost 3 ships but remained tactically effective. Worse, they showed no signs of the demoralization that typically followed such heavy casualties. If anything, They seem to be growing more aggressive. Commander, his tactical officer reported, the human fleet is coming about for another attack run. Sensors indicate they're critically low on ammunition. How low? Estimate 5% remaining across all vessels. HFY's mandibles clicked. Thoughtfully, 5% meant perhaps one more full salvo from the entire human fleet. After that, they'd be reduced to ramming attacks desperate, ineffective, easily countered. Signal all ships, he ordered, maintain defensive formation. Let them exhaust their remaining ordnance, then close for the killing blow. It was a logical plan, a rational plan, a plan that ignored everything he learned about human psychology in the past for hours. Admiral, Rain stood on Retribution's bridge, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a ship pushed beyond its limits. Smoke drifted from damaged consoles, emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows, and the deck plates vibrated with the strain of overstressed engines. Final ammunition count. He requested. One full salvo remaining across the fleet. Voss reported. After that, we're down to emergency reserves, maybe enough for 30 seconds of sustained fire. Rain nodded. One chance. Everything the lives of 17,000 human civilians, the sacrifice of his crews. The future of human expansion into this sector came down to the next few minutes. Signal the fleet. He commanded. All ships, maximum burn. We're going. To ram straight down their throats. When we get to point-blank range, dump everything we have left into their flagship. If we can take out their command ship, the rest might break. It was a plan born of desperation, but desperation had served humanity well throughout its history, from the first human who picked up a rock to defend his children to the colonial militias that faced impossible odds with nothing but courage and determination. Humans had always been at their most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. The human fleet accelerated toward the Kethmori line one final time, their engines burning bright against the star-scattered darkness. Behind them, 14 transports full of rescued civilians waited for salvation or shared destruction. The last battle was about to begin. Retribution led the final charge, with her admiral standing straight-backed on the bridge, watching death approach at significant fractions of light speed. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who knew their duty and accepted its cost. Range to target, 8,000 kilometers, Captain Voss reported. Kethmori, fleet maintaining defensive formation. All ships, prepare for concentrated fire on the enemy flagship. Rain commanded. When I give the word, everything we have left goes into that bastard. Make it count. The Kethmori fleet opened fire first, their particle beams reaching across the narrowing gap with lethal precision. The human destroyer Valor took a direct hit to her forward sections, her bow simply ceasing to exist in a flash of vaporized metal. She kept coming, her captain somehow maintaining course despite losing a third of his ship. Commander HFY watched the approaching humans with a mixture of professional admiration and mounting dread. They flew straight into concentrated fire from 5 warships without deviation, accepting losses that should have shattered any fleet's morale. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the lead human vessel is on a collision course with our position. Time to impact, 4 to 7 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Engines are still offline from earlier damage. We can't maneuver. HFY felt something. Alien crawl up his spine, a sensation his species rarely experienced. Fear. The humans weren't just attacking. They were preparing to ram his flagship with a ship 3 times its mass, moving at ramming speed. At 6,000 kilometers, the human fleet fired their final salvo. Every remaining kinetic penetrator, every plasma torpedo, every missile in there. Magazines launched simultaneously. The concentrated firepower of 9 ships, everything they had left, converged on HFY's flagship. Like the fist of an angry god, the first penetrators punched through the Kethmori vessel's forward armor, sending sprays of molten metal into the ship's interior. Plasma torpedoes followed, their superheated payloads eating through bulkheads like acid. The flagship shuddered under impacts that registered on seismic scales. Hull breach on all decks, screamed the damage control officer. Main power offline. Weapons systems down. Structural integrity at 12%. HFY gripped his command throne as his ship died around him. Through the viewports, he could see Retribution growing larger, her scarred hull filling his vision. The human flagship had taken multiple hits. During the approach, atmosphere vented from dozens of breaches. Her starboard weapon ray was completely gone. and fires burned visibly through her transparent aluminum IEWPORTS. She kept coming, braced for impact. Vexed shrieked out. The collision never came. At the last possible moment, Retribution rolled 90 degrees and passed beneath the crippled HFY flagship, so close that their hull plating scraped together in a shower of sparks. As she passed, every functional weapon on the human ship fired point blank into the alien vessel's belly. The flagship broke apart like an egg struck by a hammer. Vextaya's final transmission was a single word in his native tongue of concept that roughly translated to magnificent terror. With their command ship destroyed, the remaining HFY vessels wavered to attempted to flee toward the system's outer planets. The third, a heavy cruiser named Dominion's Edge, launched a desperate attack on the nearest transport ship. Captain Elena Torres, commanding the barely functional Vengeance, threw her dying ship between the HFY cruiser and the helpless transport. Her destroyer, held together by emergency force fields and stubborn determination, absorbed the alien vessel's full firepower. Vengeance to fleet, Torres transmitted, her voice calm despite the explosions echoing through her bridge. We're buying time for the transports. Get our people out of here. Her ship lasted exactly 93 seconds under concentrated fire from a vessel 4 times her size. When Vengeance finally broke apart, she took the HFY cruiser with her mutual kill that lit up the void. With twin sons of destruction in the transport harvester's pride, little Kira 9 pressed her face against the porthole and watched the battle with eyes that had seen too much. Sergeant Major Vasquez sat beside her, the big Marine's presence a comfort in the chaos. Is it over? The child asked. Vasquez checked her tactical display. The surviving HFY ships were fleeing, and the human fleet, what remained of it, was forming up to escort the transports to safety. Yeah, sweetheart, it's over. We're going home. What about the other children, the ones who didn't make it? The question hit Vasquez like a physical blow. She thought of the 5 transports that had self-destructed, of the thousands of civilians who had died because the rescue came too late. How do you explain such loss to a 5-year-old? We couldn't save everyone, she said finally. But we saved who we could. Sometimes that has to be enough. Kira 9 nodded solemnly, her small hand finding the Marine's gauntleted fingers. My daddy would be proud of you. Admiral Rain stood in Retribution's damaged bridge, counting the cost of victory. 7 ships lost from his original fleet of 16. Nearly 3,000 naval personnel dead or missing. The 7th battle group, his command, his responsibility. His family had been shattered in a single engagement, but they had won. 14,000 human civilians were alive because of what his people had sacrificed. The HFY fleet was destroyed. Their harvesting operation ended forever. Signal the transports, he ordered. Full burn for human space. Let's take our people home. As the battered fleet formed up for the long journey back to civilization, Rain allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The HFY had learned a valuable lesson today. Humanity would go to any length, pay any price, to protect its own. They had taken a human child and raised their own end in the process. The galaxy would remember this battle, and the lesson it taught about the species that called itself human, touched their young, threatened their families, and faced the consequences of awakening something that perhaps should have been left to sleep in the depths of space. Debris from dozens of ships drifted in slowly expanding clouds. Among the wreckage, emergency beacons continued to transmit, some human, some alien, all crying out into the void with the same desperate message. I am here. I am alive. Please don't forget me. But the living had already moved on, carrying their rescued and their memories toward home. 3 months later, Admiral Marcus Rain stood in the memorial garden of New Geneva Station, watching a small girl place flowers at the base of a granite wall. The names carved into the black stone represented every soul lost during the new sanctuary rescue, civilian and military, human and in a section that had sparked considerable controversy. Even some of the HFY crew members who had died in the battle. Kira 9, as she was still known in the official records, had grown taller in the months since her rescue. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something stronger, a quiet determination that reminded Rain of her father. She wore a simple blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking like any other child except for the way she carried herself. Uncle Marcus, she said, using the honorary title he'd never discouraged. Do you think they're watching us? Rain knelt beside her, his dress uniform crisp despite the emotional weight of the day. I think they'd be proud of you, Kira. Your parents, Captain Torres, all of them. You've been very brave." She considered this with the serious expression children use when processing adult concepts. "Dr. Zelnoff told me my daddy was dead, but I always knew he was coming for me." How did I know that? The question had puzzled Xenop psychologists for months. Every interview, every assessment had reached the same conclusion. Despite her young age and traumatic experiences, Kira had never truly believed she'd been abandoned. Even in the depths of the Kethmori ship, she'd maintained absolute faith in human rescue. "Sometimes," Rain said carefully, "we know things in our hearts that our minds can't explain. You knew because you're human, and humans don't abandon their own." Around them, the memorial service continued. Representatives from across human space had come to honor the dead and celebrate the living. The political implications of the new sanctuary rescue had reverberated through the galaxy. 3 separate alien governments had formally protested humanity's excessive response. To the Kethmori action, the humans had replied with a simple statement: "Touch our children, and we will end you." Captain Sarah Kim, now wearing the stars of a rear admiral, approached with a datapad in her hands. She'd been promoted to fill one of the command positions left vacant by the battle of bittersweet advancement that came with the weight of lost friends. "Admiral," she said quietly, "the final casualty reports are in. Official count is 2,843 naval personnel killed in action. Civilian casualties from the colony attack, 8,412 confirmed dead, 14,237 rescued." Rain nodded grimly. The numbers had become mantras, repeated in congressional hearings and media interviews. Heroes and martyrs reduced to statistics, sacrifices measured in percentages of success. Any word from the Kethmori hegemony? Their ambassador delivered a formal protest yesterday. They're claiming the entire new sanctuary colony was settled illegally in their territory. They want reparations for the destruction of their fleet. Our response, Kim's smile was sharp as a blade. The president's exact words were "go to hell." But the diplomatic corps softened it to the United Human Republic. Does not negotiate with child stealers. Across the galaxy, the political landscape was shifting. The Kethmori hegemony, once considered a minor but stable power, was facing internal revolt as news of their harvesting operations spread through their own population. Several member species had withdrawn from the alliance, disgusted by the systematic enslavement of children. More importantly, other alien civilizations were reassessing their relationship with humanity. The rescue of New Sanctuary had demonstrated something that cold military assessments couldn't convey. Humans were willing to spend everything to protect their own ships, lives, entire fleets. Nothing was too valuable to sacrifice for their children. It was a lesson that would echo through diplomatic channels for generations. The memorial service concluded with the traditional flyover 12 ships from the reconstituted 7th Battle Group, their formation deliberately leaving gaps for the vessels that would never return. As the starships passed overhead, their engines painted contrails across the afternoon sky. Kira looked up with wonder. "Will I be able to fly ships like that someday?" she asked. "If that's what you want," Rain replied, "though I hope by the time you're old enough, we won't need quite so many warships. But if we do need them, I'll be ready." The simple statement, delivered with a child's certainty, carried implications that would have disturbed the alien governments watching human space. With increasing concern, this was how humanity created its defenders, not through military academies or conscription programs, but through the simple act of protecting its young with such ferocity that the children grew up, understanding their value to the species. Later that evening, in his quarters aboard the battleship New Retribution, Admiral Rain composed his final report on the New Sanctuary incident. The official version would be classified at the highest levels, but historians would eventually read about humanity's first encounter with systematic child abduction by an alien power. They would read about the rescue. They would study the tactics, analyze the casualty reports, debate the strategic implications. But they would miss the most important lesson. The day the Kethmori took a human child was the day they doomed themselves, not because of the immediate military response, devastating as it was, but because they had awakened something primal in human consciousness, the understanding that their children were not safe while such creatures existed in the galaxy. Within a year, human exploration fleets would begin carrying military escorts as standard procedure. Within 5 years, the human defense force would triple in size. Within a decade, The phrase "Remember New Sanctuary" would become the rallying cry for the most aggressive expansion in human history. The aliens had taken a human child and, in doing so, had created the very monsters they would eventually beg to stop. But that was a story for another day. For now, it was enough that Kira 9 slept safely in her bed on New Geneva Station, surrounded by guardians who would gladly die before letting anyone harm her again. She dreamed of starships and distant worlds, of the father she'd lost and the future she'd inherited. In her dreams, she was flying among the stars, and the stars themselves burned with righteous fury at anyone who dared threaten humanity's children. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some lessons, once taught, are never forgotten, and humanity had many children to protect.